Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the University of Delaware. I'm Dennis Sasanis, and I'm privileged and honored to be serving as your president. And first, let me just say my apologies for being 10 minutes late. It was me and not Vice President Biden who was 10 minutes late. So he has credit for another visit. And I'm so glad, we're all delighted that you're here with us today for the signing of the Beau Biden Gun Violence Protection Act, which is really a historic moment in time. We at the universities, in particular the University of Delaware, we so much care about the security of all our students and everybody in the community and the university. And this is a step that is really taking us in this direction, in the right direction. And it's so encouraging to know that this bill, which Beau fought all his life for when he was Attorney General, has now passed with not just unanimous support and not just bipartisan support, with really unanimous support and I would say nonpartisan support. Everybody in our state supports this bill. It's a good example of how civic engagement can make impact through public policy. The commitment to address critical policy challenges facing our society is at the heart of the Biden Institute. And so it's so fitting that we have the signing of this law here at the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware. This speaks volumes for the Governor Carney, who is here with us today, who is choosing again his alma mater to promote how much great work the university is doing for the community. So I would like to just to acknowledge our distinguished guests who are with us today. First and foremost, the members of the Biden family. The Honorable Joe Biden. Joe, please stand up. Please. Dr. Jill Biden. Ashley Biden. And of course, Holly Biden, please. We have Governor Carney and his lovely wife, Tracy, here. And our Lieutenant Governor and faculty member of the University of Delaware, Bethany Long. And Patricia Daly-Lewis, the Executive Director of the Beau Biden Foundation. So thank you all for coming, and it is now my great pleasure to introduce State Representative David Bentz, who is another graduate of this great university. He got his Master's of Public Administration in 2011, and he is, first of all, he served as legislative fellow in Dover while he was at the university, and he's responsible for basically pushing through. He's the primary sponsor of the Beau Biden law. So, David.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. This is really a beautiful day, not just weather-wise, but also why we're all gathered here today. It's a day that is 5 years in the making. As we all know, this bill that we're going to have signed today by Governor Carney is not a new idea. It was one that was very intelligently put together and advocated for back in 2013 by our then Attorney General and the bill's namesake, Beau Biden. With the help in the legislature of then Representative Mike Barbieri, who I had the pleasure of working for at the time. So when this bill got through the House of Representatives in 2013 with only one no vote and then stalled in the Senate, I haven't been doing this work for very long, but it was, and I imagine it will continue to be, one of the most sort of dumbfounding days that I've had down in Dover. Why a bill that was so carefully crafted in a bipartisan fashion, so expertly put together, unfortunately didn't have the muster to get to the governor's desk. And after I was elected, I remember thinking, we're going to try this again. I'm going to make sure that we try this again when the time is right. And hopefully when I've had a few reps at legislation, so I know what it takes to get something done. And then in this past fall, I had a conversation with our majority leader, Representative Longhurst, who I'm not sure if she's here today, I haven't seen her, and Governor Carney, letting them know that I thought it was time. I thought it was time to try this bill again, that I thought we'd have the success we needed this time. The idea was familiar to people. We were going to push it hard and get this thing done this time. And luckily, they were very supportive, and I know the governor put the full force of his office behind this initiative and helped us along the way and really helped get it to where it is now, to where he's about to sign it. We obviously owe so much, everyone who worked on the bill this time. There's a lot of folks here who worked on it. If I went through and named everybody, we'd be here till the sun went down, both on this current Attorney General's office, the legislature, the governor's office, all the way actually from Second Amendment advocates to gun control advocates. We had everybody together working hard on this one. And then, of course, we had help from former staff members of Attorney General Biden's office who were so familiar with this policy, help us out with drafting and getting this done this time. One group I do want to specifically acknowledge, we have some students here today, some young people who have been so actively involved since the Parkland shooting, pushing for common sense gun safety legislation. We met, here, round of applause. We actually introduced this bill before the shooting in Parkland happened and before this sort of latest push for some more common sense gun policy was underway. But we met in February, some of these students over here, we met a couple weeks after the Parkland shooting happened at a rally here in Newark to talk about what we could do, what was out there, what were the ideas, and how could they help get these things done for us. And it wasn't just talk. They were down in Legislative Hall advocating for this bill in committee, advocating for it when it was up for a House vote and a Senate vote. And one thing I will ask of you is you've done it so far, it's been several months, but to maintain this passion, maintain this energy, not just for gun control, but any other issue that you feel strongly about. Because my hope, and I know the governor's hope and some of the other legislators and leaders here, is that this is just the first of several pieces of legislation that we can get done this year to help improve public safety in Delaware. And I think your efforts have been essential to what we've been able to get done so far and will be essential to any success that we have going forward. That brings me to introduce our next speaker, who I've actually had the pleasure of working with on some criminal justice issues, and I hope to continue to work with her in the future on those. The sister of the namesake of this bill, Ashley Biden.
I will be brief, but I want to thank all of you, all of the sponsors of the Beau Biden Violence Prevention Act, Representative Schwarzkopf, Valerie Longhurst, Representative David Bentz, Representative Debbie Heffernan, John Kowalko, Senator Margaret Rose Henry, Senator Del Colo, and Senator Lopez, and the entire General Assembly for voting unanimously for smart and thoughtful policy reform that Beau was deeply passionate about. I remember when he introduced the legislation in 2013 with the support of Representative Barbieri. Beau and I were both living at home. Our houses were being renovated, so we were living with Mom and Dad. And I remember how important this legislation was to him then. Beau was committed to keeping our communities safe, protecting our communities from senseless gun violence that has ravished our nation. There's a quote from Martin Luther King: "An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity." Beau lived. And he fought peacefully for smart, thoughtful, and effective policy reform to protect Delaware citizens. Gun violence is an issue that the Biden family doesn't take lightly, and each in our own ways, in our own capacities, hope to decrease, so everyone can live in a safe and healthy communities. I would like to introduce our hero, our father, and our greatest teacher. Dad taught us, me and my brothers, from an early age that, quote, "The ultimate measure of a man or woman is not where she stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. A man who practiced what he preaches." My dad, Vice President Joe Biden.
Thank you all very much. Hey, Robbie, how are you, bud? Thank you very, very much. You've heard me say this before, but my dad had an expression, General. He said that you know you're a success as a father when you turn and look at your child and realize they turned out better than you. On 3 scores, I was a great success. Mr. President, thank you for being here. And by the way, the reason why the President felt obliged to tell you he was the reason we were late is because I know none of you ever have seen me late at all. Thank you for they didn't and by the way, when you said it, Mr. President, they still didn't believe you. They assumed it was me. But hey, General, how are you? Great to see you, pal. Folks, I asked Hallie to join me today, and Ashley, because this was something that they knew on a first-hand basis was near and dear to Beau. Governor, you've been a great friend of mine. Not as good a friend as your wife is to me, but you've been a great friend. But and Bethany, you and I have been doing this for a while, and I'm glad we're both here at the university, gainfully employed, and something that we can talk about. Pete, you were so good to Beau when he was around, and you knew how much he cared about you, and I just want to thank you very, very much. And members of the House and Senate, thank you very, very much. And is Representative Barbieri here? I was told he... Come on, come up here so people can see you. Now, Barbieri knows a little bit about me, and he knows what it's like to be from Claymont. If you're in a fight, the guy you want behind you is Barbieri. And you were always there for Beau. You're always there for Beau. And just want to say thanks. And as they say in down Pete's Way, you done good in training this boy. He was your assistant at the time and became a state representative and carried this to fruition. David, you spoke well, but you also know how to legislate, and you have an enormously bright future ahead of you. Today fulfills a promise that our son Beau made to the people of this great state, that he wasn't going to give up on common sense gun violence prevention. And as many of you know, Beau championed a nearly identical bill that was referenced by David a little bit earlier to the one the governor is about to sign. And it's something he worked for his whole professional career. As a matter of fact, back when I was writing the crime bill in the United States Senate and the gun legislation, he was my self-appointed staff. He was deeply involved in that as well. Not a joke. It was something he felt very strongly about because he was then a U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, and doing major crimes in Philadelphia. And so the fact is that Beau set up a task force after Sandy Hook, although it had been something on his mind for a long, long time, and to look at the root causes for mass shootings and what we could do here in Delaware to better prevent those tragedies. And it quickly became clear to Beau and many of you legislators that one of the major problems is that there's no mechanism that exists for a mental health provider to report specific threats to law enforcement. And such a mechanism could allow law enforcement to conduct an independent investigation to a threat and work with the Justice Department to remove weapons when appropriate, much like the protection already in place for domestic violence cases. And but Beau was committed to the idea that the state could improve public safety by removing weapons from those deemed a threat to themselves as well as others while ensuring due process. And I've spent most of my career dealing with this issue and with the NRA, and as you probably do know, of the thousands of people who die as a consequence of gunshot wounds, the majority are self-inflicted. They are suicide. The majority are suicide. So this is not merely to protect the community at large, it's to protect those who are affected by the instability that they have to live with and trying to overcome. But that bill came up short of passage, as already been mentioned by David, and Beau promised that he wasn't going to give up this fight. The very night that it lost, those of you who are with Beau know what he said, and the quote was, "I will not give this up. We will get this done." You did it for him. You did it for the state. You did it for yourselves, but you did the right thing. When Beau, as those of you know him, and all of you here did, most all of you did, thought something was right, he was determined to stay with it. Beau possessed a strong belief that we have to continue to move in the right direction. We couldn't solve every problem immediately, but we could chip away and just continue to change the equation. That's what this bill does. We have to continue to move in the right direction to protect our communities from violence. And that's who Beau was. He was a man who would stand and fight to protect others and fight to protect the lives of those of the most vulnerable and stand up for the voiceless, as well as stand up for those who he'd be the first. I know the ACLU has some problems with this bill. I am someone who the ACLU has honored my whole career. I think you're wrong about this particular piece of legislation. I think there are plenty of due process safeguards in here, and quite frankly, the people who it may most end up protecting, the most lives may be saved, are those very people who are going through this mental conflict. And Beau did that, put safety first as Assistant United States Attorney, and he did it, as General Vavala knows, as a major in the Delaware National Guard, and he did it, as our President Attorney General knows, as Attorney General of the state. As Attorney General, remember, he was out in the community, meeting with law enforcement, victims of violence and their families. He used to take Beau over to the Bucket in the East Side where I used to work, and he'd get out of the car and take his little son, Hunter, who's not here today, he's in school, and go out and sit there in those pickup games. As they say in the East Side where he used to work, the only white boy who'd sit there and get to know everybody in the neighborhood. Have his son know the people in the neighborhood, because that's the way we deal. That's the way law enforcement tries to function here. That's what community policing is all about. And to Beau, it was more of a mission. And he took bold action to ensure victims receive protection, lending a shoulder to survivors in need, and just having someone to listen to. As the family knows, Beau used to always give me hell because I was always calling someone who was in trouble. Or I'd give people my phone number when they were in trouble, and they'd call all the time. And it wasn't until I passed away that Pete uncovered this little secret that Beau did it all the time. I had no idea how many people he gave his phone number to. And he gave the phone number to the victims, all the victims of that predator down in Lewis. That's what you guys are about. That's the Delaware way. That's the uniqueness of this state. We know one another. We know one another more than anyone really fully understands. And our family deeply appreciates this commitment that you've all demonstrated, shown by so many women and men in the legislature, in fact, ultimately unanimously, in support of both chambers. The Delaware legislature has accomplished with this bill that which seems to be elusive in many other places, a bipartisan commitment to craft common sense gun violence prevention legislation to protect the community. There is room. There is room to talk with people who you have profound disagreements. There is place to meet compromise, whether it is the NRA or whether it's any other group with whom you may have profound differences. There is space. There is space. It matters that we engage one another. And that's what all of you did. And it's paid off. Beau protected, changed, and saved, in my view, a lot of lives in too short a time that he walked on this earth. And that's what this event proves today, as well as the work of his foundation to protect children. It's that Beau is in many ways still alive. Beau is still with the family. He's still with us. You know, an institution, the old expression goes, is little more than a lengthened shadow of an individual. Well, Beau continues to cast a long shadow on the Biden family, and hopefully on the things he cared about that will continue to be worked on. And John Cochran, I want to thank you for being here as well. John's the chairman of the board, a good friend of mine, and I appreciate all the support you've shown to other endeavors that Beau was involved in. And so with that, let me suggest that we're going to go on, you're going to go on, protecting and changing and saving a lot of lives in the years to come. And I want to thank President Sanas for giving me the opportunity to set up the Biden Foundation here. We have already had a number of meetings on domestic policy, and we had a large conference on gun violence, as a matter of fact, here. And we hope that we can become a policy source for many of you in the legislature. I don't mean Joe Biden, I mean the Biden Institute. It works with every organization here in the state, from the business school to the political science department to every other department. And we hope, and the president's allowed me to bring along a significant number of some high-powered staff that are the very people who, had I run and won, would have been serving in the Justice Department and the Intelligence Department and in all the economic fields that a president has to deal with. And they've come up and become associated with the state and with the university. So hopefully we can also, as you move forward, continue to be a bipartisan source of help. And with that, let me, there's a few things I get to claim after all these years. One is the successes of my family, not me. And the other is the success of my good judgment and the people I hired early on. And one of them is the governor of the state of Delaware. It shows just how bright I was and how knowledgeable I was. But the best thing, the reason why this guy owes me big is he met his wife in my office. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor John Carney, a great friend and a great governor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And that is correct. Not only was I fortunate to have my first job in public service working for you, somebody that I've looked up to all of my public service career, but I met my lovely wife, Tracy Carney, who's here with us this afternoon. Usually, when legislation passes in the General Assembly, I don't have much to say about what the signing ceremony might look like. But when my staff came to me with the idea that we might have it here at the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware, that we might be able to bring attention to our former Attorney General in the shadow, as the Vice President says, that he has left for all of us, that we can celebrate the members of the General Assembly who were so instrumental in getting this passed unanimously, both in the House and the Senate, that we could have an opportunity to celebrate all the advocacy groups. We recognize the March for Our Lives students who are all here. We didn't mention the moms demand action. You want to talk about people demanding action? When the moms demand action, you better respond. And we get an opportunity, frankly, at the end of the day, to pay tribute to Beau, the tremendous work that he did for our state, the legacy he leaves for all of us with the Beau Biden Foundation, celebrate our wonderful first family in our state. And so I was more excited than ever. I attended the spring game this past weekend, and I was interested in seeing how the Blue Hens were going to be next year, and I think they're going to be pretty good. I couldn't help but think about the way I feel about my role in this piece of legislation, which has been detailed by Representative David Bentz. And I think we should put our hands together again for David Bentz and Mike Barbieri and the people who started this. If you don't know Representative Bentz, he's one of the good guys. He has an incredible, quiet, competent way about him, where he's always looking to do things in a bipartisan way. This bill passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate. He's a delight to work for and with. He worked originally on this legislation back in 2013 with former Representative Mike Barbieri as staff, carried it forward, picked up the ball this year, and just expertly led it over the goal line. Representative Bentz, thank you for your tremendous work on this and for the members of the House and the Senate. But I feel like I'm an important part of the team, but the team has brought the ball all the way down the field, Dr. Asanas, to the 1-yard line. And now I get to push it over into the end zone. And I feel like that's just a small part in what's happened here in Delaware, where we've been able to pass common sense gun safety legislation in a bipartisan way, building on an idea that the former Attorney General, our beloved Beau Biden, came up with back in 2013, and to celebrate Delaware as a special place. We are special. I had the opportunity to serve on your behalf as our lone congressman for 6 years, and I can tell you, interacting with my colleagues in the House from other parts of the country, it's not like this in other parts of the country. It really isn't. And so today is as much a tribute to our beloved Beau Biden and the Biden family, a celebration of working together, as well as a testament to what makes Delaware special. And so with that, and thank you all for coming, we're going to move to this desk and quarterback sneak this thing into the end zone.
Yeah, I'd like to invite the family and the sponsors of the bill and our students to come and join us for this.
Squeeze in, turn your shoulders a little bit. Perfect. Squeeze it in. Thanks. Celebration of the Delaware way.
By the way, I'd like to invite everybody in to see the center. You're welcome. There's some coffee in there. I don't know if there's enough for everybody, but there's coffee. Just wander through, take a look at the magnificent facility that the chairman of the board arranged for me and Dr. Asanas. And so, and welcome to the university. Welcome.